The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
While the crowd was pressing in on Jesus and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. He saw 2 boats there alongside the lake. The fishermen had disembarked and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, he asked him to put out a short distance from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. After he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and lower your nets for a catch." Simon said in reply, "Master, we have worked hard all night and have caught nothing, but at your command I will lower the nets." When they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come to help them. They came and filled both boats, so that the boats were in danger of sinking. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For astonishment at the catch of fish they had made seized him and all those with him, and likewise James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners of Simon. Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." When they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. The Gospel of the Lord. Yeah, it might perhaps dismay you. It might drive you to prayer to know that this passage, there's so much in this passage that every line deserves its own sermon. So get to praying. Yeah, no. And in fact, that's an underestimation. Every line in this gospel deserves 2 sermons. So yeah, we're all in over our heads now. We all better start praying, just like Peter in over his head at what has happened. So too we are in over our heads here. But I'm going to jump to 1 and then maybe 2. You know me, maybe 2 homilies today. Okay, let me give the first. Right, there's a lot of action in this scene, and the first thing that we have to note, and let me say, I'll give this to you also for your prayer, because it can't stop here, right? If I can see at least 2 sermons in every line, I know that there are many more than that as well. And I don't know exactly how God intends to speak to you and to your heart, how he expects, I don't know, how he intends to draw you into his own blessed life, to draw you further into his mission today through this gospel passage. But I know that it's the gospel passage that does all of those things. I don't know the specifics of it for you, and I can only give some hints myself. So take this gospel passage and pray over it. Make good use of it. Allow God to make good use of it in your heart and in your life. So encounter the word. It's a veritable feast here. This is a treasure trove of goodness, of God's riches. And so I offer that to you. But let me give a quick one, okay? And by a quick one, it means like 20 minutes minus a couple. So sorry guys. But there's a lot here. And I trust that we're all receptive to the word by the Spirit's working in our hearts. So well, here, like Jesus. Okay, so there's a lot of action in the scene. Who's at the very center of it? Jesus. Okay, I mean that's every gospel, right? There's a lot of action. Jesus at the center. Jesus at the very center. And that's terribly important for us, not only to see, but also to appreciate, to understand, and to accept. Because it's got to be the same for us. If we want to have lives packed with action, or maybe if we don't, okay, lives of significant action, lives of significance, lives of purpose, then Jesus has to be at the center. You could go line by line here and see the crescendo of meaningful, purposeful action as you go. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to say, look at where the passage seems to turn and ramp up, right? It hits another gear right in the middle where Simon, I'll use it interchangeably, okay? Simon, later Peter, where Simon says, "At your command, I will lower the nets." So Simon, at the obedience, being obedient to the call of Christ, lowers the nets, and then, boom, everything starts happening. The fish, more fish than they can handle, pull it in, go off. Peter down at Jesus' feet, and coming back, boats on the shore, leave everything and follow him. But it turns on Simon's obedience. So Jesus on the scene, he's right in the middle of the scene. He's the one who's initiating the action. He's the one who's pushing it forward to completion. He's the one calling the shots. And the fruitfulness and the occasion for life change is affected by Simon's obedience. And then everything happens, and it happens very quickly. That's the first thing I want to point out to you. Now, let me say this. I want to go deeper on that point, on Simon's obedience. Because the way I just said it, it sounds nice. But for anybody who's ever been called to obedience, or anybody who's felt Christ pushing in a direction that they don't particularly want to go, you know that it's not like this. It's not like the way I just allowed you to believe it was. Like, okay, yeah, obedience. So Christ is going to call, and you're going to do what he wants. Now, that's what we want to cultivate. That's where we want to be. But the chances are that there's going to be a lot opposing that push, especially as we grow into a life of obedience. As we grow to hear, even just to hear the voice of Christ, and then give ourselves to it whole and entire. This is massive stuff. It's one of the reasons why this passage is so good, and we should pray and pray over it. What's going on beforehand in this passage, right? What has Jesus done? Jesus has insinuated himself into Simon's life. Did Jesus ask whether or not he could get into Simon's boat? No, he did not. He got into Simon's boat. And his boat is his livelihood. I don't want to make a kind of modern parallel. I will. It's weird, but like, we're all working from home now, right? So you're sitting at your workstation, and here comes Jesus and bumps you out of the way and sits at your workstation. You know, it's like he's got access to everything, browser history, emails, and all. Right? I mean, it's like, this is a really uncomfortable situation. And more than that, because he's put himself into your life. This is Jesus and Simon. He's put himself into the vehicle for his livelihood. That's how he earns money. That's how he supports his family. And Jesus just walks right into it, and he starts ordering him around. And it's okay, he's a powerful preacher, Jesus. So there's something terribly compelling about him. And Simon's going to say, okay, yeah, we'll push out. We'll push out. I'll help you out. Okay, I'll help you do your thing, which is preaching. You're going to preach to the crowds from my boat. Okay, fine. Go out into deep water and lower your nets for a catch. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're a carpenter. What do you know about fishing? We were fishing all night. That's when we catch fish, just so you know. Right? Carpenter. That's when we catch fish. Don't catch fish during the day, because you can't. It doesn't work like that. But at your command. So I just want to say that in the passage, there's already the sense of pushback. There's already a sense of going against what we have habituated as our grain, right? So like, in a sense, there's a lot pushing back on the call to obedience. So if there's resistance in your heart and life on hearing Jesus and obeying what he's asking you to do, you are not alone. This is the story from the beginning. Okay, so it's not easy. And it's not easy because you're not inclined to listen to Jesus all the time, in every way, and the like. But we are, by grace, we hear that in St. Paul, the second reading, by grace, we are inclined to toil tirelessly for God and his purposes. By grace, we've been called and are being equipped to live in God's service. By grace, we can obey, even where it goes against the natural grain, my own desires and dreams and so on and so forth. Why is that? Because Jesus, again, is at the center. So I'm not at the center of my own life. this is the cultural reality of the world, right? Is that we are told, and we're told in a million different ways and pushed into it, you are the center of your life. And so what we have is, billions of minuscule, unimportant, insignificant stories. But here, we're being invited into the story of God. One story in which we're not at the center. Jesus is at the center, but he makes us to fit God's plan for the whole of creation. Okay, so this is all going on in the scene. And we have to see this. Jesus at the center and obedience. Now let me shift gears. Okay, so that was kind of like one homily, right? Okay, it was half a homily. I'll give you the other half. Yeah, sorry. Or 1 and 2. Depends how you count. Doesn't matter to me. Okay, so I want to drill deeper, because this scene also presents to us a real kind of vital, like a lived, perhaps parable for prayer. It's not a parable, right? But it gives us, it issues to us an invitation to go deeper in prayer. And I want to make sure that we don't miss that. And what I'd say is, as you are committing yourself to a life of prayer, my friends, we all have to do it as a matter of our being disciples of Christ Jesus. We need to live lives of prayer. It means that we need, according to the wisdom of the saints, we need to take a 30-minute block of time every day in silent meditation. We need to spend at least half an hour straight of prayer. We have to commit ourselves to that primal relationship that we have with God. It's the first thing in our lives. If Jesus is at the center, we need to be a praying people. Now, we can grow into it, right? So I'm not saying, make sure, okay, half hour, like look at your schedule. I do want you to schedule it, but I would say we can start around 5-10 minutes. We have to be able to give our heart to God. We know how difficult it is to give our hearts. It takes a lot of time. It takes energy and attention and the rest, and we have to do it. Again, Jesus is at the center. But what happens here, this is like the natural flow of prayer this passage gives us, at least like as a launching pad. And what I'd offer is this. In your prayer, do this. Pray, adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication. Okay, it's the 4 main blocks of prayer. Acts. It's the 4 main blocks of prayer. Adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication. And exhaust yourself on each before moving on to the next. And see how long that takes you. So go to prayer, go to the silent corner of your house or room or whatever, and begin adoration, adoration, adoration. As much as you can do. And then when you feel like, okay, I can move on, I'm going to go to contrition. Thanksgiving, the same. Supplication. I want to give a couple points about this. We see it in this passage. Adoration. What happens? Simon is overwhelmed with the glory of God. It's been revealed to him. How has it been revealed to him? Yeah, in the miraculous draught of fishes. Right? The power at work in Jesus is the creative power that has called the universe into life out of nothing and sustains all things in existence. By the way, these are words that you can use in your prayer for adoration. I don't want you to think like my voice in your head for adoration, but these are things that you can say, like, God is amazingly powerful. You are amazingly powerful. So adoration is our praising God for who he is in himself. Say, God, your very life is love. This is a matter of praise. Your whole being is love. And you've loved creation into existence. And you sustain everything in the world by your love. And you have loved me into life. Right? I praise you for your goodness. God, you are beauty itself. Everything that is beautiful is a mere reflection of your beauty. Right? And so I don't want to give you everything, because it wells up from within as well. And this is part of our lives of growth in prayer. So adoration. What happens when we adore God? When we adore God, it's like we're like looking through a telescope, right, at the sky, and like when we really latch on, it's like we look at the sun and it just blows us away, because we are confronted with his holiness, with his goodness, with his beauty. It's overwhelming. And what naturally happens is that we're confronted by how far away from him we are. His holiness radiates, and we're like, I'm only a tiny fraction of that, if at all. And that's what happens with St. Peter. It's not like pious platitude that St. Peter falls down at Jesus' feet and says, depart from me, I'm a sinful man. That's what happens whenever we have an encounter with the holiness of God. And let me say, as an aside here, it's important, is that it's one of the reasons why we should never, ever, ever, ever get caught up in someone else's relative holiness. Ever. Their sinfulness or their holiness. Ever. We should never be caught up in someone else's sinfulness or holiness. Why? Because when we do that, we pretend like the whole spectrum is like this. This is that guy, this is that guy's sinfulness, and this is my holiness. And maybe like full holiness is a bit beyond me, but at least I'm on the way. That guy, however, he's sinful and a bad man, right? So this is what we think it is. But this is not what it is. This is not the whole spectrum. That whole spectrum is here, it's this big, and it's over here, and God's holiness is over here, and our holiness and sinfulness is over here. So sinner and saint alike, and by the way, the saints are just people who knew that they were sinners, right? Sinner and saint alike look to the holiness of God, and they're overwhelmed with his goodness, such that they're brought to their knees. For what purpose? Contrition, right? Contrition. Because, Lord, you are holy, and I am not. You are the thrice holy God, and I can't even come close. You are the creator. I'm a meager, lowly creature. Right? We're put by contrition, right? We're saying, Lord, you have called me into life for your purposes, and I've been about my own business. Right? All these and all the ways that we go astray are then in the light of God, they're illumined. And we can see them, and we want healing, and we want strength to overcome them. And so we're making acts of contrition at that point. Right? Our hearts are turned to contrition because we've adored God. So adoration, contrition. That's our launching pad, because at that point, in contrition, we realize that God, who has no need of me, has called me into life, and he's called me for his purposes. I am thankful beyond belief that he has called me into life, that he's summoned me to faith, and for his many gifts, that he's given me fellowship in the church, for people who are on their way, for people who have been called into this mission, right? All these great and good gifts that I have in my life. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for everything that you've given me that conduce to your purposes, right? And then I think we know how to do the Thanksgiving part, right? And then we go to supplication, right? Supplication, like asking God for stuff, but because we've been straightened out by our experience of adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and our whole life is to be thanksgiving because Jesus' whole life was thanksgiving. We get to supplication. We've been straightened out to ask God for what we need for the mission that he's entrusted to our care. Those are the most powerful prayers of supplication. If we ask God, if we ask Jesus for anything that we need to persevere in the mission that he has entrusted to us, he will give to us. It's the prayers for the Ferrari and the pony and the whatever. Those are prayers that are less likely to be answered. Okay? There are prayers in the middle, right, where there are serious prayers and we're grappling with the will of God and the rest. But we know that he's giving us what we need to sustain us in the life that he has called us to. It's a life of great and costly love. It's a life of sacrificial love. It's the life of Christ himself. He's called us to that life. He's summoned us to it. He's equipping us for it. And now, in supplication, we get to beg him for what we need to live that way. And he's going to give it. Okay, so adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, supplication. And the homily is on the podcast, so you can go back and listen to it again. No, self-promotion. Okay, I'm not that good at it. Anyway, so that is what it is. But I want to say this. Look, let me pull that back and say, if we don't get that ACTS, then okay, fine. But we have to pray. Why? Because just as in the passage, Jesus has to be on the scene, and he has to be central. We have to allow him to call the shots, and we have to be ready with obedience as our response. Then, my friends, we will be massively, abundantly fruitful. So much that the boats can't hold. Right? We will be abundantly fruitful. And then when we come to the shore and we encounter Jesus and he calls us to leave everything and follow him, we will go. We will go. And he will give us everything we need to prioritize him and God's mission, and we will be eager and willing to give ourselves totally to him who has given himself totally to us.